Our primary focus today will be on launching the process of updating our workforce strategic plan. Governor Lamont will be joining us around the 2 o'clock hour. We'll also hear updates from Workforce Commissioner Kelli-Marie Vallieres on the progress of our current initiatives and the results from the legislative session that finished yesterday.
Well, it's something to move.
And what I'm going to suggest here, Kelly, is is to maybe do your update before we do the kind of roll call votes on minutes, because I still see a number of people kind of joining the meeting. Can we, Laura, jump to kind of Kelly's kind of update? Thank you. Kelli?
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you so much for being here with us today. And again, my apologies as well for our technical difficulties, but we will power through and appreciate you sticking with us. Wanted to spend a few minutes giving you some updates on the things that have been happening at OWS since the last time we met. I know our last meeting was moved from April to today to accommodate our workforce summit. And so again, appreciate your flexibility. Top of mind for everyone as the legislative session ended late last night. And I want to thank all of our legislators and state officials and staff for all of your dedication throughout the session. A lot of work goes into that session from all people and a lot of late nights. So we appreciate that. We want to greatly appreciate our Appropriations Committee, the Senate and the House for codifying and passing our budget. This has been extremely important to OWS as our line item on the state budget was enough funding to cover approximately 3 staff. Our new appropriations will cover approximately 10 staff. So you'll see staff members who have been durational, who have been braided funding sources will be coming onto the team on the state line budget, and we'll be hiring additional staff and filling in multiple positions that we'll be happy to share with you as we move forward. So that was a really big win for us. The agency continues to be an independent state agency, the Office of Workforce Strategy, with the Chief Workforce Officer as a commission role over the agency. We did move our APO, which stands for Administrative Purposes Only, back to the Department of Economic and Community Development, and they will be handling our back office activities. And I want to thank our partners and team members over at DECD for their generosity of time and expertise and helping us stand up our agency and now continuing to support us and be really great partners in all the work that we do. The legislation also expands the GWC Workforce Board, adding an expert in residential construction, a regional vocational technical high school, a representative, and a representative from the Agricultural Science and Technology School. Each will be appointed by the governor. So appreciate and we'll be welcoming additional members. We'll provide a more detailed update to all of you in our next meeting in July as we go through the plethora of things that OWS has been asked and required to do coming out of this legislative session. So more to come on that. And I really would like to thank again everybody for your attendance and participation in the Workforce Summit named Building an Inclusive Economy. This summit was a really collaborative approach between the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, the Connecticut State College and University System, the Workforce Council, ReadyCT, Social Venture Partners. We had 430 business leaders, educators, community members, and policymakers. This was one of the most well-attended and diverse group of people who have come to a CBIA hosted meeting, and we're looking forward to making this an annual event. But just to share a little bit about the diversity, 27% of participants were business leaders, 20% were a broad range of state, local, and federal government agencies and program administrators. 33% were from education, and 20% were from community-based organizations. The summit really focused on how do we leverage private and public sector and nonprofit organizations to come together and help to solve the state's workforce shortage crisis, and making sure that we're really focused on accessing those who have been traditionally left out of our workforce, who have been under participating or underemployed and underskilled, ensuring that we provide the training programs that meet them where they're at and move them through where they would like to be on the entry to their forward career trajectory. And really been focusing a lot of efforts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, the heart of that conversation. We were fortunate enough to have some national leaders attending the conference. Brian August, CEO and co-founder of Opportunity Works, was our lead keynote speaker in the morning, and basically saying the challenges that we're facing are solvable. So we're excited to get moving on that work. And just next week, I'm actually attending a Jobs for the Future event in New Orleans to continue the conversation that we had with Byron and with Tamisha Bridges Mansfield, who is from the Opportunity Works and Good Jobs Challenge and Jobs for the Future. I knew I was going to get it. And then we had Luke Rimes from the U.S. Department of Education as a Deputy Assistant Secretary. I thank my partners in the state who also participated and facilitated discussions, and really wanted to highlight the work of the panel led by Terrence, Cheng, and Luke Rimes on students from high schools and community colleges, and the role of providing them robust opportunities and career pathways provides for them in building their future. And as we talk about this, some initiatives that OWS is working on and some updates on CareerConnect. So if we go to the next slide and CareerConnect, I just want to share a little bit about the portal. So we're really excited that the portal has attracted over 7,000 people signing up in the portal to date. You'll see that almost 3,000 of them are actively working with our workforce boards, and our community-based organizations are in some process in the either signing up for training programs, are in training programs, have completed, or and have been employed. So looking forward to sharing some information with you there, but there's some great statistics here. 70% of our residents are those registering are under 40 of age. 45% of users have a GED, and 25% of users have another industry recognized credential. And you'll see the selections of the industries that they're interested in are fairly evenly distributed across the offerings that are currently in the portal. And if we go to the next slide, we see that the grantees, all of them are off to a very strong start. It took a little bit of time getting the program up and running due to all of the rules and requirements of ARPA and the complexity of, bringing in this many grantees working together and collaboratively on these statewide programs. But overall, we have 1,123 people who are actively enrolled in training. About half of them have completed training programs. So we're getting close to that 1-year goal. And you'll see that about 380 of them, or 25% who have entered, are employed. I want to draw to your attention that this data is a snapshot in time and was graciously updated specifically for this meeting. Our grantees are required to do this quarterly. And so they were great at updating this information so we can present it to you. People who, these training programs are various lengths from 1 week to 24 weeks. And so the numbers enrolled, completed, and employed, again, take into consideration that people are at multiple stages within these programs and their journey through them. So we're looking forward to seeing these numbers grow as more programs come online. And again, just another way to show that we're, doing a great job at meeting our year 1 goal, which was to, enroll about 2,100 people, making sure that about 1,800 complete, and of that, a robust number get jobs. So we're looking forward to breaking the goals that we had set for ourselves. And I see as we move this forward, that is very likely to happen. So thank you to everyone who's working so diligently to make this program a success. The next slide really shares the kind of broader picture of supports that's required to ensure that the population that we're targeting for this particular program, again, those who have been underemployed, unemployed, sitting on the sidelines, they have barriers to entry into the workforce, and particular reasons why they are not able to meet maybe their career aspirations. And a lot of that has to do with some of those barriers that they need to overcome. So this program, along with many of the other programs that are run through the workforce boards, through WIOA and other grant-funded opportunities, provide supportive services in the categories that you see, and stipends to people who are taking these job training programs. The goal here is to ensure that while they're taking these job training programs, that they really have the opportunity to focus and not worry about, are they going to be able to pay their rent? Are they going to be able to get to where they need to go? Ensure that their children have quality childcare and other services. So this is currently the breakdown of supportive services, and they're provided on an individual basis. We had estimated approximately $3,000 per person. And you can see that we're coming in around that average. And a really great announcement to share with you in a few moments on how we're going to be able to leverage those dollars even further. But if we go to the next slide, you'll get to see a little bit more about the marketing targets that we're doing. So we've been very intentional with the U campaign that is supporting driving traffic into the portal. I want to thank Anthony Barrett from our team, who is leading this work. And thank you to Jonathan, who put this really great interactive map together. There's a link in the chat for all of you. If you look what this shows is where our marketing campaign has really been targeted. And then if you scroll over any of the dots, it will give you a live site update of the unemployment rate in each of those areas. And you'll see that the darker the area, the darker the dot, the higher the unemployment rate is. And at this stage in our marketing campaign, we're working with O'Donnell on really being targeted in regions that have high unemployment rates, high diversity communities, and how do we get, boots on the ground marketing. So for example, in Derby, Ansonia, and Naugatuck, they have some of the highest rural unemployment rates in the state. And so we're doing some very intentional marketing there to drive their residents into the portal so that they have access to all things in the workforce board system through CareerConneCT and again, the workforce boards. And then lastly, I am very excited to announce a partnership with the Department of Housing and the Department of Labor and our workforce boards. Commissioner of Department of Housing reached out and provided an offer of $30 million of their ARPA funding to support people specifically in job training programs with a rental assistance program. So anyone who has not taken advantage of the Unite CT workforce rental assistance in the past or have not utilized all of the 12 months or $15,000 supports and meet a income threshold are able to apply for this program. They will go through CareerConnect portal, through the American Job Centers, through their community-based organizations that are running CareerConnect programs. And they will be put with a case manager who will go through the application process with them and send it over to the Department of Housing. And thank you also to the workplace, to Joe Carbone and Adrienne Parkman. Their agency is leading the call center that is processing all of these applications in the background. So we ran a pilot program, which was very successful with 12 people. And now we're able to launch this statewide. We had a really great press conference last Monday and got over 300 people in the first 24 hours reaching out to understand how they can get involved. We're also doing reverse referrals. So those people who are working with the homeless population, you are getting the ability to reverse refer homeless people into our job training programs so that we can get them stable housing and job training and put them on a trajectory for independence in the future. So a lot of things happening at the OWS team and a lot more coming up. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you on the update to the strategic plan that Mark will be leading the discussion on in just a few minutes. And that concludes my report. If you have any comments or questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat and I'll respond to them as I can.
So Kelly, thank you so much for that fantastic and exciting report. It's as Kelly said, a lot of the programs just started, but the early election returns in a sense of terms of training results are extremely positive. You know, we'll have to see the final tallies on these things as these programs kind of mature and people kind of finish them, but it's looking like we may set kind of, a real, kind of national kind of record on for such a large program. So very excited about that. Now I'd like to turn to our housekeeping business. We have 2 roll calls votes that we'll be asking each person to vote on when we call your name. The first vote will be to approve the first quarter GWC minutes. The second vote will be to authorize an electronic vote of the council to approve the fiscal year 2024 WIOA allocations, much like we did last year. So to move forward, we need a motion from a council member to approve the minutes. Please state your name and your organization. If you, and it could be a designated council member as well. Is anybody...
This is Amy Porter, Aging and Disability Services.
Thank you, Amy. Can we have a second?
Second, Keith Norton, Department of Education.
Thank you, Keith. Any discussion about the minutes? Okay. Now we need a motion from a council member to authorize the electronic vote to approve the WIOA allocations.
So moved, Department of Education, Keith Norton.
Thank you, Keith. Do we have a second?
I'll second. Kelly Vallieres.
Okay, great. Now I'm going to be calling on people individually and you just say yes or no and yes or no. So I need 2 votes from each person. The first one being for the minutes, the second for being the electronic authorization to do the electronic vote. So calling myself, yes, yes. Next, Kelly Vallieres.
Yes, yes.
Alexandra Dom.
Mr. Robertson, are you here? You may vote on Alexandra's behalf if you're here.
Yes, it'll be yes, yes.
Amy Porter,
Yes, yes.
Anthony Medici from Medtronic. Brian Doubles or George from Synchrony.
Hi, Mark. George Anderson. Yes, yes.
Thank you, George. Keith Norton for Charlene Russell Tucker.
Yes and yes, Mark.
Thank you, Keith. Christy Pentima.
Yes, yes, Mark.
Thank you. Chris O'Connor or his designee from Yale New Haven Hospital. Paul Schenfeld for Cindy Bigelow.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Dante Bartolomeo. Or Mark, if you're there.
Todd Birch on their behalf. Yes, yes.
Thank you, Todd. Ed Hawthorne.
I'll abstain from the minutes, but yes, on the second.
Thank you. Erica Smith. Jay Williams. Jeff Walker.
Yes and yes.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeffrey Flax. Hartford Healthcare. John Murphy. Newmont's Health. Joseph Gianni, Bank of America.
Yes and yes, Mark.
Thank you, Joe. Judy Olean.
This is Bethany Zemba on behalf of Judy Olean. Yes and yes.
Thank you. Kathy Szilard.
Yes and yes.
Thank you, Kathy. I think Carrie out till 2 on Carrie Hohen. Leslie Torres Rodriguez. Letitia Colon de Mayas.
Yes, I'm here and yes.
Thank you, Letitia. Maggie Hulse.
Yes and yes.
Thank you. Marty Guay.
Yes, yes.
Michelle James.
Yes and yes.
Minette Ferguson.
Yes and yes.
Neil O'Leary. Paul Costello.
Yes and yes.
Peter Nystrom. Peter Salve or his designate.
Rich Jacob for Peter Salve. Yes and yes.
Thank you, Rich. Joanne Lombardo for Rodenka Merrick.
Abstain on the minutes and yes.
Ray Pinault.
Abstain on the minutes and yes.
Thank you. Rowan Freeman. Sal Menzo.
Yes. Excuse me. Yes and yes.
Thank you, Sal. Shane Eddy.
Peter Holland for Shane Eddy. Yes and yes.
Thank you, Peter. Sharon Barr. Sean Coyne.
Yes and yes.
Thank you, Sean. Shelley Davis.
Yes and yes.
Thank you. Suresh Muthuswamy. Steve Sullivan. Or his designee from Eversource. Tony Walker. Terrence Cheng. Tina Acacio. Taiwanda Tally Rushing.
Yes and yes.
And Wes Alexander. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. So Next, we'd like to talk about the kind of update process for the GWC Strategic Plan. I'm going to get into this partially and then subject to when the governor comes here. So it may get broken into two parts. But over the last few months, a group of people, members of the GWC and other government officials have developed a draft framework for kind of a revision, because it was 3 years ago that we published the GWC Strategic Plan. So we're working on a revision for this fall. Our goal today is to begin the process and to begin to get your input on an updated plan. We're going to be having breakout sessions today and to allow everybody to participate and to start to provide kind of input to the plan that we're going to be developing. As the first step, or if you flip to the next page, as first step, we've re-examined our vision and mission statements. These are in draft form, and welcome back from everyone before we're going to eventually adopt these statements. You can provide feedback in the chat if you have comments now. We will take them, or you could offer them in your breakout session. But I'll just quickly kind of go through them. On the vision side, we envision a workplace system in which every resident has equitable access to a rewarding career, and every business has the skilled talent to innovate and thrive. On the mission, our mission is to establish an equitable workforce system that creates a foundation for an inclusive talent environment, attracting and inspiring a diverse range of students, workers, and businesses by integrating the expertise of the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, anticipating and preparing for workforce needs across all industries, and providing all individuals with the education, training, and supports to achieve meaningful careers. And let me just stop there. If there's any, anybody wants to kind of comments, can't see everybody, but if you kind of, raise your hand in one of the features, I think we'll be able to see them. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Our new plan is really going to be kind of very much focused on utilizing this strategic blueprint. Hold on 1 second here. We've been thinking a little bit differently about kind of the overall organization of our work, and realized that rather than having just a set of separate initiatives, we really have some interlocking areas of focus. So we've kind of envisioned our plan a little bit like a house. Foundational to our house are data and diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. With respect to data, we're committed to outcomes above all else and ensuring that every investment we make is informed by data and is outcomes-based. We're going to use quantitative and qualitative ways of ensuring the effectiveness of our efforts. And the data committee will work closely with other subject matter experts along each of the strategic pillars to really define the right set of KPIs. Diversity, equity, inclusion, and access are foundational to our efforts and integral to every effort we undertake. We're committed to creating a more inclusive economy that ensures every individual, regardless of where they are on their personal journey, has a seamless and supported pathway from education and training to a good job that enables them to contribute to the economic and civic life of our state. And I'll just point out that this committee has been one of our most robust committees. We have people representing over 60 different community-based organizations and representing different populations in our state who have actually put together very specific plans around kind of what different supports and changes are required to really be able to effectively engage their populations and kind of really pull them into the workforce. Now I'm moving to kind of the purple part, which is the strategic pillars. And there are 3 of them that are very interrelated. You can think of them as a kind of one leading to the other. We have career pathways, which is creating a continuum of learning from K to 12 through to higher education into jobs that combines academic, technical, and professional education with relevant work experiences. We have sector training in the middle, which are typically shorter term training programs, but they don't have to be all short term, that are upskilling and reskilling people to meet the skills needs of different kind of industries. And then on the right, we have kind of the role that our employers play, whether they be in business or government. It's really important that they participate in broad talent development as early as possible in this pipeline, with providing a lot of clarity regarding kind of skill needs and getting involved early in terms of providing work-based learning opportunities for people. So we believe that building out these 3 areas is, if we do that, we're going to have a really sound kind of ecosystem. Ultimately, the strategic pillars that are undergirded by data and DEIA ladder up to the overall kind of workforce system in our state, which has a lot of really kind of diverse participants across businesses, government, educational institutions, community-based organizations, our regional workforce boards, all working together to strengthen our workforce development system. Our goal here is to create a coherent, cohesive, and collaborative system that spans all of these different efforts and brings them together to really provide a lot of different access points to people who are really wanting to gain the education and skills that they need. So again, let me kind of stop there and just ask if there are any kind of comments on this, but this is sort of serving as kind of a blueprint. Let's move to the next chart. So this is a little bit of a comparison of where we've come from and where we're going. Our plan that was agreed upon in October 2020 was a very ambitious effort in scope and collaborative in approach. And it was obviously affected by the COVID pandemic. I would say that it was a group of like 19 specific initiatives that many of which have been accomplished. And I would say the difference is we kind of like look to refresh this plan is, first of all, we're in a different environment. We have a rebounding economy, but with significant labor shortages, due to increased retirements and also barriers that people face. And with a lot of change happening both technologically and throughout. And so what we're looking to do is to potentially kind of shift this plan to focus on bigger goals, as well as kind of key levers that, across the workforce system. And I appreciate the comments, by the way, coming in through the chat line. So if we go to the next page, we're going to look at a labor market snapshot. As a state, we face a significant challenge for skilled talent. We're hearing from businesses every day that they're challenged in finding workers, and also, by the way, from government. There are more than 103,000 open jobs in Connecticut as a state, which is, we're experiencing a tight labor market. Our unemployment rate is 3.8%. Even if all of the unemployed people in the state were hired today, there would not be enough people to fill the number of existing open jobs. We have open jobs in every growing industry sector of the state, and those talent demands we expect to remain significant over the foreseeable future. Another challenge is the disparities that we see in labor market outcomes. The data on the right side shows that the unemployment rates vary across different populations. Black males have twice the unemployment rate of white males, and Hispanic males have unemployment rate that is 30% higher than white males. This data is from the current government population survey, which does have an error rate, but it provides, I think, an important snapshot of the kind of inequities by race within our workforce. And I think the other thing to kind of keep in mind here on the question about, well, where are we going to find people? Our labor force participation rate in Connecticut is about 62%, which means there are a lot of people that are on the sidelines that are not counted in these statistics. And that's certainly going to be an area that we're going to need to kind of really focus on in our work, is to be able to track those people back into the workforce. Can you jump to the next page? So this is really national data, but it holds true for Connecticut too. You can see there's a very strong relationship between education, earnings, and employment and unemployment in this page. So you can see the more education that people are getting, the lower the unemployment rate and the higher the annual salary, the earnings that people make. Now, not all workers need a doctorate in order to support their families and have economic stability. But what this slide does show is that as workers attain more education, they're more economically secure and less susceptible to the various changes in the economy that can contribute to unemployment. What this also shows all of us as policymakers, as business and community leaders, and as educators, is that we need to design, as we design a quality workforce system, it's really important to think about this as a continuum of learning for every individual, with stackable credentials and experiences that provide a pathway to higher learning and economic stability. Let's kind of flip to the next page. Our new plan will kind of set the context of where our economy and workforce development efforts currently stand, and include a very honest and transparent assessment of the work to date in terms of what's worked, what's not worked. And then we kind of would like to set a set of big goals, 5-year goals, focusing in on various areas. And this is going to be one of the areas we're going to be talking about today in the breakout sessions, whether, what are the right goals to focus on. We here have some suggested areas. One is labor force participation rates as a whole, and then breaking them down for specific populations. Because, for example, there's a 10 percentage point difference between men and women in terms of labor force participation. And in some places that have addressed issues like childcare more aggressively, you see much narrower differences between men and women. We have big differences by race. We have a much lower labor force participation rate for the reentry population, or people with disabilities, or veterans, for example. And so one of the things we believe is that by measuring this, it will enable us to really focus in on really addressing how we can bring different populations back into the workforce. Another goal that, we're thinking about is, and something that the state has looked at before, is really measuring post-secondary credential attainment. And by this, we're not only talking about kind of associates and bachelor's and master's and doctorate degrees, but also certificates that, workforce certificates. And then finally, another goal is growth in career pathway programs, which means kind of starting in our high schools or even starting earlier in our K-12 system, and what kind of career pathway programs do we have across the state? I know, for example, that our current level, I heard the other day of high school students in our college programs, dual enrollment, in the state is about 3%. And I'm told that the number for Texas is over 30%. So there's a lot of work that can be done here in terms of building out these capabilities across the state. And please do kind of keep these comments in the chat line. Thank you very much. And we'll get a chance to respond to them as a group in a little while here. Could you move the slide forward? Thank you. In building out this plan, we're going to be focusing in, and as I said, on some of the kind of key levers. And these are kind of several kind of key foundation and strategic pillars that we're going to be focused on. We're not going to be going into great detail right now on this, but I'll just kind of mention them briefly, which is in DEI and A, the team has identified a number of specific barriers ranging from transportation to childcare to housing and other things. So one of the things that we're going to be working to do is to really address these levers specifically. In order to basically kind of, reduce those barriers. And you could see an example of that in what Kelly just talked about today in terms of the supports that we're providing through CareerConnect. But this also applies to education programs, our colleges and other, kind of workforce related efforts. In career pathways, we want to focus on developing programs in our high schools and colleges, developing kind of deep industry partnerships so that all students can gain exposure into careers and learn about careers and have the opportunity to do coursework and work-based learning related to careers. You're going to see hopefully a big effort on dual enrollment programs. This is an area that we think is really kind of critical. Many of you know that in our community college system or higher ed in general, we've seen in a lot of cases kind of declining enrollment in the last few years. Well, one of the kind of keys to addressing that is to have a greater number of high school students be able to take advantage and do college work, while they're still in high school. And that we think this is going to be a kind of huge opportunity for Connecticut. Another is teacher certification. We need to be able to have more teachers who are prepared to be able to teach these kind of career-oriented programs. So we're going to be working very closely with the State Department of Education, with higher education, and with our employers to really be able to design programs that really do build out career pathways for people so that we engage youth at a much earlier stage and that people can access career pathways throughout their careers. Sector training, I think we have seen already that a lot of success with short-term training programs that are aligned to jobs, good jobs, and address the interests that trainees have. we think there's opportunities to build upon this. We think there's an opportunity to expand the sector training into new industries. We think there's an opportunity to provide more opportunities for people who are adult education students. And we also can do probably a better job of targeting the needs of specific populations so that people really have the opportunity to succeed in these programs. Obviously, these programs require kind of employer engagement. We've been very pleased with the hiring commitments that companies are willing to make. We're training people right now directly for real opportunities out there, and we'd like to be able to continue that. Another big issue in sector training is coming up with kind of sustainable funding for all of this. Right now, these programs are being funded through a combination of some of the emergency government funding sources, like the American Recovery Act, the Good Jobs Challenge, WIOA funding, but we're going to have to kind of become more creative, I would say, over time, and kind of finding ways of kind of funding these. On the industry side, we're really looking to kind of engage companies really deeply because none of this is possible without kind of employers, whether they be in the private sector or the public sector, to really be able to provide skills-based hiring, meaning that they're hiring not based on just purely degrees, but based upon skills, where there's opportunities for prospects to engage early on in work-based learning, really focusing in on quality jobs that really can provide people with kind of sustainable livelihoods. And this means redesigning a lot of the recruitment and employee development kind of pathways that exist within companies. Today, we're going to have breakout groups in these three areas that I just described: career pathways, sector training, and industry leadership. And finally, on the data side, we're going to be building out, based upon the goals that we decide, the ability to track how progress against those goals, as well as to be able to track kind of how we're doing, how effective the programs that we adopt are doing in terms of preparing people for employment and enabling people to kind of, complete and achieve kind of relevant credentials that will enable them to work. So with that, be happy to take any kind of questions that anybody has. I know there's been some really great comments in the chat line. Do we have any kind of questions or comments here?
I have my hand up, Mark. You may not be able to see it, Leticia.
Go ahead, Leticia.
Thank you so much for acknowledging. Just want to say under the original category DEIA that one thing I think should be there is that benefits cliff. I think that is a significant issue which we keep running up against at our program, specifically in relationships to folks enrolling and then being afraid that if they're working that they won't have the benefits. Obviously, thank you so much for the housing information. I think that is so critical. We have had several people in our program, not an intake, but after a couple of weeks of being in there, we find out that they don't have housing and that's probably a barrier to their success. And we haven't been able to connect with any resources at all for that. So we just think that this is a great thing. Just wanted to acknowledge that amazing change, which obviously will need more funding over time. But I think that's really great. And I hope that the community-based organizations specifically will learn right away how to gain access to that support. And then the other thing is that in the chat, someone had put in there about disabled folks. I think that that's another area that I've had experience with before working with CareerConnect, where oftentimes people could work and they don't, again, because of the benefits cliff. Because if they try to work, they lose all of the benefits and supports that they had, including insurance. And I think that that's probably the biggest problem for people who have disabilities, is to lose insurance and not be able to continue the medical care that they need. So I just think that there should be some, in general, working people are struggling with the cost of insurance because it isn't offered to them for free. And the cost of everything has gone up. So I don't know if this is outside of the scope of your capability, but I do think there needs to be some broad state level discussion about insurance, healthcare insurance specifically I'm referring to, for people who are not state employees, but work and deserve to have insurance. So I'm not sure what could be done, but small businesses struggle to offer insurance at reasonable costs. And so I think that it's a major problem, barrier to employment for those people. Thank you.
Thank you, Letitia. Great comments. And I think as many people know, we've taken the first step on benefit cliffs in the work of the last couple of years in piloting the Atlanta Fed benefit cliffs calculator. So we now know, to Letitia's point, what a big barrier various kind of benefit cliffs are. I think kind of, what we should be looking at in developing this new plan is coming up with kind of, what should be the policy changes that we need to make in order to kind of, help people.
Yeah, Mark and Letitia, to your point, there was a lot of interest from our legislators on benefits cliffs this session. So we're looking forward to engaging them between now and next session. And we're working with the 2Gen group on how do we put together a pilot program where we can provide a fund that would step people down off of their benefits as they lose them, so that there is not that cliff. And, I experience that as well with the people that work in my companies. And it is not only detrimental to those individuals, but to the companies who really need them to grow. And so this is something that I think we're going to definitely be spending a lot of time on this summer, and working with our partners and making some proposals to our legislators for next year on some pilot programs. We brought this discussion also to the national level, to the National Governors Association as well, and started the conversation there. So thank you for that.
Rick, Sebastian.
Thank you, Mark. I just want to add a couple of comments on that benefit cliff conversation, particularly as it relates to the Atlanta Fed tool that's being used across the country and here in Connecticut. It does not and is not coded to conduct anything related to SSI or SSDI payments, which is a major portion of the disability community benefit cliff issue, followed by the Medicaid eligibility. I know and I'm aware and utilize the various Medicaid plans that we have in the state, but without a consolidated effort to really look at the entire benefit package and the length of time that it takes to get to that break-even point by losing benefits and earning income, we have a long way to go. And so I'd echo Letitia's statement that we really want to be focusing on benefit cliff for the entire sector, not just for the entire population, excuse me, and not just for those folks that are receiving benefits, but to look at SSI.
Thank you, Rick. What I'm going to suggest next is, Kelly, do you want to kind of introduce the compact kind of discussion for that we're going to be covering in these breakout sessions?
Yes, absolutely. Happy to do that. Just for all of your awareness, we're waiting for the governor to join us. He will be here momentarily, I imagine. We don't want to go into our breakout sessions until after he's gotten here, because once we're in breakout, it's going to be really difficult to get you all back and then get you back into the breakouts. So I'll take a few minutes to frame the breakout discussion now. And if we can spend a few extra minutes on the compact, could be helpful as well. So we presented a compact at the Workforce Summit in April. This was put together from a lot of feedback from all of our stakeholder groups in the public agencies, within our industry partners, our K through 12 higher ed, and our community-based organizations. We looked at some national compacts and focuses for ensuring we grow our workforce across the country, and looking at best practices from other states, and kind of put together for consideration, like what each of these stakeholder groups could really be focusing on that would help move the strategic plan forward. And so at this time, as we're looking at rewriting and updating the strategic plan, and again, the rewrite doesn't mean abandon the old plan. It means evolving of the plan, as Mark laid out carefully in the documents that he shared with you as being discussion documents for your reaction and your input. The goal of the strategic plan is that it's owned by all stakeholder groups and all of our partner agencies in the state, and that each has roles and responsibilities and ownership of segments of the work that is in the state's strategic plan, and that we're ensuring that we're aligning all of that work between state agencies, our education partners, our community-based organizations, and really aligning them to our industry partners. So as we're waiting for the governor, we can just spend a few minutes kind of reacquainting ourselves with the compact and looking at some of those ideas and how we would incorporate them into the update to the strategic plan. And we really don't want to have two separate documents. We'd like to have one cohesive document, and we could by all means bring these very specific things into our strategic plan or incorporate them in some way. So when we're looking at our public agencies, our state agencies, our municipalities, what are the things that we can do, and looking at that, saying, research on regional labor market data is really important. Patrick Flaherty from the Department of Labor, many of you probably know him or heard him speak in many different ways on presenting the economy to Connecticut, does an amazing job on presenting all of this data and slicing and dicing it for us, not only in public, but private organizations as well. But how can our public organizations also provide funding for training and supportive services that are necessary to provide all of those supportive services that we talked about earlier that are important to ensure people have equal opportunity and overcome barriers? How does our public agencies ensure that we align our resources across our public agencies, businesses, and community organizations so that there's a continuum? And an example of that is the partnership between the Department of Housing, the Department of Labor, and the Department of OWS to roll out that $30 million in additional housing supports and stipends. So that's one great example of how we can do this. How do we measure efficiency of our programs and share data? So we're having robust conversations on data management systems in the state, and how can we have multiple agencies accessing the same data reporting tool, data collection and reporting tool. And then how do we identify programs that are best practices and bring them to scale? So as again, I'm sharing through this, we were gonna have a little bit more conversation in the breakout. So I'm bringing this to the larger group as we're waiting for the governor. Please put any of your insights again and continue to use the chat. Industry, thinking about it broadly. Thinking about the state of Connecticut as an industry employment partner, thinking about our municipalities, our community-based organizations, as well as our traditional businesses. How do we ensure that the jobs that we have and the jobs that we're creating are good jobs? And we came up with a good jobs matrix That is a rendition of the Jobs for the Future matrix. This goes directly towards the Good Jobs Challenge that we won the large grant for, and working with our employers on how do we ensure that necessarily a entry-level position can still be a good job. And how do we commit to skills-based hiring? As Brian Auguste from Opportunity Works presented in the summit, there's about 860,000 Connecticut residents who do not have a traditional academic credential like an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree, but could be highly skilled. And so how do we ensure our hiring partners are looking at skills and not excluding people from their talent pool because they don't have X degree and X number of years of experience? So working robustly with our industry partners on that. And Connecticut has done a great job at looking at our state employment opportunities and removing barriers of degrees to the majority of those jobs. Obviously, if you're going to be a lawyer, you want somebody who has a degree in law, but you don't necessarily need a bachelor's degree to do a lot of jobs that require a bachelor's degree. How are we doing on time? And do we have any word on the governor yet?
Kelly, Governor Lamont has just joined us. You're right on cue.
Perfect. So welcome, Governor. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I know that it's been a very long week for you, and we're excited for a brief update from you on all things coming out of your office. Thank you.
Hey, Kelly. Hey, Mark. Hey, everybody. It's been exhausting, but we got a budget done on time. It was incredibly bipartisan, the most productive session, I think, in many a year. We got the tax cut that was very important in terms of not only helping out folks, but also a perception of the state and where we got to go. And we had the biggest commitment in education and workforce. And my priority 1, 2, and 3, which is why I wanted to do this, is keep this economy growing. And it's all about economic growth. You can't have opportunity without growth. That means the best trained workforce in the world. That starts with pre-K and K through 12 education. We've got big commitments there. I got to make sure we're holding people accountable so I know how that money's being spent, make sure it goes into the classroom. And then workforce. And I got to make sure that we got a lot of different tentacles to workforce. So I'm always curious to make sure that the apprentice program, the internship program, the manufacturing pipeline, each and every one of you, and our tax policies are all coordinated to make sure that we're singing with one voice. I see Chris DiPantima there. We've got a pretty good tax credit where we give you up to $5,000 as a tax credit if you hire somebody from a Connecticut school and you start paying down their student debt. But nobody's taking advantage of that credit yet. We've had it only for the 6 months. But it's the type of thing I got to make sure that everybody is on the same page. We know the variety of different services that we're providing for folks, and make sure the business community is front and center. We're providing the jobs that you really need. And thankfully, Kelly and Mark and the team is there to help, help coordinate this. We have community college, we have Department of Labor, we have a lot of other pieces to the puzzle. And that's why I want to just sit in for a minute. How's the budget? What's your feedback on that? All right.
Governor, I want to thank you for your work on ensuring that we got our budget expansion. That was really important for us to continue to scale the work that we're doing to expand our partnerships and build that aligned system that really has the juice to start cranking out a lot of people. If you want to go back and share with the governor our updated numbers on CareerConnect, as this continues to ramp up, we are really starting to see the outcomes of all of your investment in this system. And we are well on our way to exceeding probably our first year goal here pretty quickly. So we're excited about the numbers, and you'll see down here the grand total. number of people enrolled already versus our 1-year goal. So we're over halfway there. People are coming out of these programs. They're at various different lengths from 1 week to 24 weeks. So people who are enrolled could still be in those training programs and haven't completed yet, and as they're coming out the other end of completion, they're going into employment at a robust rate. So this is just 1 point in time, and we're excited to see these numbers scale.
Hey, let's see everybody on the screen if I could. Marty, Guay, how are we doing? Are we training the people that you need, and what should we be doing better?
I think this forum, Governor, is so important for the future of the state to make sure that all of the collaboration happens in one forum. I think OWS under Kelly in alignment with Mark on the planning side allows us to make sure we're synchronized, because if we're not synchronized, we can't scale. So I think we're at the point now, everyone's working well together and we're starting to scale all these programs. So I'm very bullish on what's been done with your vision through the hands of all the people on this call.
I was just with Joe in workplace, and you know, it's not simply a matter of, hey, there are jobs out there, jobs, and all you need is a little training and you can do it. I mean, what we were working on there was making sure we could provide the rent relief, make sure you had the transportation, make sure you had the daycare, take away any of the speed bumps that maybe discourage people from getting that opportunity. We did that about a week ago, right?
Yeah, we did it on this past Monday, Governor, and thank you very much for that. And you too, Kelly. That was an interesting collaborative. It's the only one of its type in the entire nation. And it's mixing the whole notion of helping to pay someone's rent while they're in school, while they're learning. It's a great thing. And thank you for your leadership on it.
Kelly, we need a few more people with IT skills to help out for the audio at workplace.
A little garbled there, Joe, but we got it. And thank you so much for your partnership.
Hey, Governor, it's George Anderson with Synchrony in Stamford. I just wanted to mention that we are seeing unprecedented cooperation, not only with Mayor Simmons in Stamford, but also with your office and Kelly. And these forums are also allowing us to best practice with people like Marty, Guay, and others. So this has been a very much needed coordinating function, and we at Synchrony appreciate it.
And you have your own specialized program that you created, right? I was there about a year ago.
Yes, we do, Governor. But we are folding that into and leveraging not only the efforts in the innovation corridor that the mayor and Kelly is working on. And so we're going to just amplify that. What we need Kelly's help on and Mayor Simmons' help on is what we're calling wraparound services. So, you know, we're comfortable with training folks, particularly in tech. We are not comfortable with the wraparound services that they need in order to be ready for the training. So things like transportation, softer skills training, counseling. That's what we are exploring partnerships with Kelly and Mayor Simmons on.
And think creatively regarding our community colleges. Obviously, the population there is down. We got some really nice modern facilities there. We're trying to figure out how best to utilize that space and
yes,
less about more about programs.
Governor, next week we are having 7 instructors from Norwalk Community College come, and they're going to spend a couple of days with us, and they're going to learn about what we at Synchrony need them to teach at the community college level. And again, Terrence Cheng has been a fantastic partner with us and helping us with that.
Thanks, Kelly. Thanks for holding it all together. Appreciate you guys staying involved. It makes a difference. Look forward to seeing you soon. I got a little more free time now.
That sounds great, Governor. Thank you so much again, and really appreciate you taking the time to jump on and share some of the wonderful outcomes of the budget.
All right, see you guys.
So Kelly, you want to kind of take us through how the breakout sessions are going to work?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to ask you all now to jump into your breakout sessions. We're going to ask people to be creative and think maybe outside of the breakout sessions that you might typically go to and go somewhere else. We'd like to see, you know, a nice mix of you in each one of these breakout sessions so we can have some really robust conversations over some of the ideas around those levers that we talked about, you know, defining the goals and maybe the specific issues that we're trying to solve for in the strategic plan over the course of the next 5 years. So would really love diverse opinions in each of these breakout rooms. We've set up a document for each of them with just, again, some ideas for your reaction and input into. This is the beginning of a long conversation. We'll take back your feedback. We'll incorporate it into next iterations. We'll work with all of our partners and our council, you know, offline off of this larger meeting. And then we'll bring something back in our July meeting for another round of your feedback and input to. And the goal here is to get something codified and be ready to publish for the end of the year, and then have an end of the year in-person meeting, really kind of reviewing and establishing the forward momentum of that work. So each of you will be able to pick one of these breakouts. You'll see facilitators. We have a lead facilitator in each breakout room. And there's also a set of questions that we've put together that you can react to. Don't feel like you're married to answering all of those questions or using all of those questions, or just a discussion guide to kind of start the conversation. Really looking for robust interaction in these. And there will be in each room for the facilitators a scribe taking notes for you and someone who's going to control the slides. As you get into the group, the breakout group, there will be a link for anybody who wants the 3 slides and put them up maybe on your second screen and toggle back and forth for your ease of participation. So thank you again. And then we're going to go into this session for about 40 minutes or so. And then when we come out, we'll have a brief 5-minute update from each of the lead facilitators to the larger group. And then we'll conclude the meeting at 3:30.
So my thought was to kind of go till 3:10 in terms of these breakout groups. And then people will come back with readouts from each of them. Is there a place on the toolbar here to kind of enter into these workout group, these breakout
Laura's
groups?
Laura's gonna set that up for us right now.
Okay.
So,
You can
Laura,
see
you
it
want
on
to
the
give everybody
bottom there.
directions?
Join a breakout group.
Mhm.
If everybody would do that now, we'll go into the breakout sessions.
If you have any technical problems, Laura will be here to help get you where you would like to go.
So folks, you should be able to see the ellipsis on the bottom and join the breakout room. You can sometimes hover over it, it comes up in blue. And I'm just going to give everybody about 10-15 seconds to join. And then anyone who's left with me, I'll go ahead and give you a little push into the breakout room of your choice. So let's just give everybody a little bit of time. And then I can manually push you into a room for those of you who are left.
Why don't you do this again, Laura?
Joe, is that you?
You want to do it for me?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I was in the wrong one.
Joe, your mic is muffled a little bit.
I don't know why.
Yeah, take it up a little static.
I don't know how I just did that over the screen, but that's okay. All right, folks, it is a little easier for me to go in relative alphabetical order. So if you don't mind, Alan.
2.
2. Hutch. Carlo.
2.
And
we, in the next section here, we're going to do some readouts of the discussions that have occurred. Just speaking for the one that I was in, which was industry leadership. It was a really great discussion that kind of, went pretty deeply into, not just kind of, what should be our goals in working with, employers, but also, the hows. How do you actually make this happen at scale and so on? And there are a lot of really good issues. So anyway, I don't want to take away the, from Marty, who's Marty Guay from Stanley Black & Decker, who's going to be doing the readout, but maybe we should just start there and then we'll do the other two ones. So Marty, you want to talk about kind of what you saw, some of the key takeaways?
Yeah, I think the key takeaways is that we felt that the forum of regional sector partnerships was the right forum, but are we getting enough scale? Are we getting enough speed? Are we getting enough of the strategies executed through that? And do we have enough of the strategies executed through that? Jacob brought up, the innovation and how we can, get more innovation, and Marianne Haley talked about disconnected youth, and Taniqua talked about, how do we change a process that could have been in place 50 plus years, and that there is a need for growth. Natasha Harris talked about how do we get the scholars matched up with the companies, or the interns matched up with the startups. So we know we have a lot of component pieces. We know we have a lot of the right recipe here. How do we scale it? And I think the biggest takeaway I learned is that we have a massive change management process that we need to undertake through big organizations and small organizations and all organizations. And we need to make our recipes very strong and durable and sustainable, but very simple for the employers to adopt and execute around them.
Which is really interesting because, we did not get a lot of pushback on the compact ideas, but a lot of question about how to make it happen.
Change, I have a good friend of mine. He says the only person in the world who likes change is a wet baby. And I think he's right. I think change is really hard. And I think we really need to work at this as a group and tease it out hard and really stress test it and try it in different places. But I think this is the hill to climb.
That's awesome. I love that saying. I'm going to keep it. My saying on change is that the only constant is change. Right. So we always expect that it's going to come. But you're right, Marty. I mean, this is really hard work, and it requires all of our partners to take a look at what we're doing and how we need to change and grow and scale and align, and thinking that our work is very important, but our work fits into a bigger ecosystem, and how does that fit in, and where do we take that to scale? Great. Thank you. Mark, who do you want to call on next?
Yeah, so let's next do education and career pathways. Who's the going to be doing the readout?
Yeah, I'll take that one and have everybody hop in as needed. So a lot of similar themes, no strong pushback on the compact. It was more, okay, how do we do it? What do we do? And I think one key theme that came out of this notion of career pathways, which is, basically getting people from, originally we started with K through 12, to the K through 16, and what's going to be that middle ground that's going to get people from the K through 12 system into the right training, education opportunities, and into the workforce. The pieces are there. We have examples of what we've done. I think one of the key things that came out of this was the complexity. Yes, you have higher ed, and you've got SDE involved, but you also have, mental and social, needs that need to be addressed. The adult learners out there, we can't let them go. The stat that came out was we got over 10,000 people in the adult learning program in between 25 and 44, which is, the prime hiring age. So there's a lot of folks in there, and people are looking earlier in their, in their learning, looking broader across, a wider set of people in Connecticut. And there was some, very open, we started talking about, it went from dual enrollment to triple enrollment, and triple credit. This idea, because of course we did, but this idea that you've got, the educational, the K through 12, the secondary, and workforce readiness, kind of coming together. And of course, there was pushback. Okay, so from the academics, what does that third aim look like? And I think that's going to vary from school to school, industry to industry. Is it internships and apprenticeships? Is it work more informal work-based training? There's a lot of different ways we can look at this. How will a UConn approach this differently than a community college versus a Goodwin? I think all of these things have to be knitted together. And at the core of all this is that experience of the learner, of the potential worker. I think what came out of this was there's a variety of different ways people are getting into this. Those wraparound services that George from Synchrony mentioned in the first session are incredibly important, just even getting that training, let alone getting into the workforce. And the not-for-profits, the state, the industry, all these people have to come together to think this through. So I think the willingness is there. I think the capabilities are there. I think we've got examples of where people have done this. What do we do to start to institutionalize that? In terms of success metrics, finally, we want to look at the individuals, but we also want to be able to measure the system as well. Are we creating opportunities? Are we creating awareness? And as the system as a whole, beyond the anecdotal successes, how is it opening up capacity in the state to provide this training and these job career pathways? And hopefully I got about 60-70% of that right. But it was a rich discussion, as these often are.
Jeff, if I may, I just want to add one thing.
Sure.
I think about everything, number one, and the only thing I would add that might be actually an action item for all of us, right? As state leaders and folks with a lot of visibility, is how we talk about things, right? That came up in our discussion.
Yeah. Real good point.
The nomenclature, the tone, and to be very mindful about how we frame those opportunities so that one is not kind of seen as lesser than the other and so forth, because by creating this kind of continuum of experience potentially, or even just a landscape of different opportunities, we catch as many people as possible and bring them into the fold. And somebody mentioned, like, we don't say things like, well, you're just getting your associate's degree, or you're only going to community college, or you're just going to be a plumber.
Non-traditional pathway.
Yeah, quote unquote non-traditional. Exactly. The how we say it matters, because it's not a thing we like to admit, but I mean, there's a lot of judgment in society about all of this, right? So again, as leaders, how do we be very mindful of what we say and how we say it to kind of create as much inclusivity and not kind of telegraph or subliminally message exclusivity. But thank you.
Thank you, Jeff and Terrence. We want to hear now from the sector training breakout session.
Yes, I'm going to handle it. Kathy had to leave. We had an interesting discussion. Sorry we didn't have more time because it was just beginning to get interesting. And I think there was a concerted effort to hear everyone. And most folks would cite various groups that would continue to have difficulty moving into the economy, and perhaps barriers that are there that maybe some we haven't thought of, but most I think we have thought of. And I think as people see these things that are advancing, you begin to be sure that no one forgets that there are others out there that need help. And let's not say we've had success and thus move on. So I think they were alerting us to a number of possibilities of further barriers that people have. But clearly we have to acknowledge that there's been great success. I mean, one of the interesting points of data that Kelly pointed out is for these kind of wraparound services, $3,000 per person. You came pretty close to it for the people that have been here. And that's an indication of the commitment on the part of the department to be sure that no one is left out. What I tried to do, opening up for discussion, was to talk about the worker shortage and to talk about what would happen over the course of the next several years if we don't address some of the fundamental problems that are creating a labor shortage. The protection of the economy, and the governor mentioned this, to be sure we're able to continue an economy as robust as the one that we have right now. All this great opportunity that people are going to have in Connecticut is the result of an economy where you've got, if we had 0% unemployment, there would still be $30,000 jobs unfilled. That's unprecedented. We have never had a situation like that. And the preservation of that kind of a robust economy ought to be the top priority of our state. And I know it is with the governor, and he's approaching it even from the standpoint of housing. But from our system, as we are bringing more people into the workforce, and we're finding creative ways through, remote works and other forms to be sure we do our part to increase the size of our labor force. As that is going on, we must also focus on the fact that we're facing a labor shortage that's going to last for a good number of years. And as it does, we need to invest in the incumbent workers, because they're already here, they're already employed, and we need to upskill them in a way that makes them much more productive. We need to encourage small businesses to use technology during this period so that we don't lose ground. And we can't let all these older workers, and we're the 6th oldest state in the country, we can't let them all leave the workforce in Connecticut. We've got to find alternate ways in which we can retain a good number of them. So we sort of were on 2 levels, interesting on both. I'd be anxious at some point to continue this conversation, but it was very good. And again, I praise the department. I think they've made enormous progress. Kelly and company and her great team, enormous progress. So we all look with, I think, confidence in the future.
Joe, thank you so much. Thank you for your leadership. And I want to thank everybody today for participating in today's meeting. And as we said, with regard to the strategic plan, we're just getting going. We're going to schedule time at both at the July meeting, and we'll have other sessions to really encourage your ideas and input. I think that the general feedback we got today is that while a lot of what we've laid out here is in the right direction, there's a lot of work to be done to kind of operationalize it and to kind of make it practical. So that's going to be kind of one of the areas that we're going to be focusing in on, in building this out. But we're building on, I think, a good, strong foundation that's you have all built over the last few years. And it takes all of us. This cannot be kind of an OWS kind of effort alone. This has to be kind of really everybody, working together to make it happen. So we look forward to seeing you at our next Governor's Workforce Council meeting on July 20th, which will be virtual, will be our 3rd quarter meeting. Please look out for the WIOA e-vote if we decide to move forward on that. And I hope you found today's meeting engaging. As always, we're going to obviously look at all of the chat comments and be incorporating those. We'd welcome any additional feedback from participants today. And because we're always would like to make these meetings better. But thank you, and apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning of the meeting today. We'll get those kind of solved. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. God bless. Have a great day, everyone.